My father's words cut through me like broken glass. Your child doesn't exist for us. He didn't whisper it. He didn't even say it with shame. He said it like a sentence. Flat, cold, final. And in that moment, standing there in my own kitchen, I felt my knees weaken. I had been paying them, my parents, $900 a week. Every single week. Rent money. Grocery money. Utility money. Gas money. Money that could have gone to my daughter's college fund. Money that could have gone to building the life I was fighting for. But instead it went into their hands. And the one simple thing I asked for, was for them to come to my daughter's graduation. They didn't show. When I called them that evening, trembling, desperate to understand, my mother stayed silent. It was my father who answered, his voice sharp and dismissive. We don't owe you an explanation, he said at first. But when I pushed, when I begged, he finally spat out the truth. Your child doesn't exist for us. My name is Rachel Carter. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Like the people who should love you the most are standing there with knives behind their backs, waiting for the right moment to cut? I had spent years believing that giving would eventually earn me something in return. Respect, love, family. But all I bought was silence and betrayal. The night of the graduation, I sat on the edge of my bed with my daughter's diploma in my hands. She had looked for them in the crowd. She had asked me if they were late. She had smiled, waving, searching for the grandparents who had promised her a big surprise. And I had to swallow the lie for them. I told her, they're here in spirit. But inside I burned. I thought about every dollar I had handed over, every time I'd stayed up late doing overtime just to make sure they had enough to cover their bills. I thought about the times they had called me crying, guilt-tripping me with stories about not being able to afford food, or the car breaking down. And then I thought about my daughter, standing on that stage, clutching her diploma, her eyes still searching. That was the moment something inside me snapped. 40 minutes after my father's words, I cut them off. No more money. No more calls. No more enabling. I blocked their numbers. I walked into my daughter's room, kissed her forehead, and swore to myself, if they wanted to erase my child, I would erase myself from their lives. But I had no idea. Karma was already waiting at their doorstep. And it was about to knock louder than they ever imagined. I didn't expect the silence to feel this heavy. No buzzing phone. No late-night calls. No emergency texts begging for money. For the first time in years I was free. And yet, beneath that freedom there was something darker. A storm forming on the horizon. 3 days after I cut them off, my father showed up at my job. I was restocking shelves at the bookstore when I felt it. That familiar scent of cigarette smoke and aftershave. I turned, and there he was, standing at the end of the aisle like a shadow I thought I had escaped. Rachel, he said, his voice lower now, almost pleading. We need to talk. I clenched the edge of the shelf, steadying myself. About what? About how my daughter doesn't exist for you? People in the store turned their heads. My father shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. That was a mistake. You know how I get when I'm angry. But I saw it in his eyes. It wasn't a mistake. It was truth. The words had slipped out because that's what they really believed. So he kept going. We need your help, Rachel. The mortgage is behind again. Your mother's been crying. The cars. I cut him off. Stop. Do you hear yourself? Do you hear what you're asking me? I lowered my voice, leaning closer. You told me my child doesn't exist for you. If she doesn't exist, then neither do I. His face darkened. The pleading cracked into anger. You ungrateful little. He stopped, glancing around the store. Lowered his tone. You think you can just cut us off? After everything we did for you? My hands shook, but I didn't flinch. What exactly did you do for me, Dad? Take my money? Break my spirit? Make me believe that family means sacrifice until I had nothing left to give? His eyes narrowed. For the first time I saw fear flicker there. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing the money. He left without another word. But I knew it wasn't over. That night my phone lit up with blocked calls. Dozens. Voicemails from my mother crying, begging, saying they couldn't survive without me. Messages turning from "we love you" to "you'll regret this." I deleted everyone. But then, karma moved faster than I expected. 2 weeks later I got a call, not from them but from a bank officer. My parents' house was being foreclosed. They hadn't been paying the mortgage for months. The money I gave them, my $900 every week, hadn't gone to the house at all. It had gone somewhere else. Somewhere darker. And when I found out where, it shattered the last fragile piece of love I had left for them. Because this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about addiction. Lies. Secrets I was never meant to see. And the truth was uglier than I ever imagined. When the bank officer told me the truth, I felt the air leave my lungs. "Your parents haven't made a mortgage payment in 6 months, he said calmly, like he wasn't detonating my entire reality. I gripped the phone tighter. "But I've been giving them money. Every week. $900. There was a pause. Then his voice sharp, clinical. "Ma'am, I can't speak for how they've used it. But it wasn't for the house." I hung up, my hands trembling so badly I dropped the phone. That night I drove to their house, one last time. The front yard looked the same. Overgrown grass, chipped paint on the porch. But inside it was different. Piles of unopened mail on the counter. Shut-off notices. Empty liquor bottles hidden under the sink. And then I found the receipts. Stacks of them. Casinos. Liquor stores. Luxury items. They had been living off my money not to survive, but to escape. To gamble. To drink. To drown themselves while I worked myself raw, believing I was saving them. I felt sick. I stormed into their bedroom where my mother sat on the edge of the bed, mascara smeared across her face. "Rachel," she whispered like I was supposed to comfort her. But I didn't sit. I didn't hug her. I threw the receipts onto the bed. "Explain this." Her eyes darted. Her lips trembled. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." I snapped. My voice cracked like glass breaking. "All this time I thought I was paying for food, for bills, for survival. You made me feel guilty every time I hesitated. And the truth is, you were burning my daughter's future away." Her tears turned bitter. Defensive. "You don't understand what it's like to struggle." I laughed. A hollow, sharp laugh that startled even me. "I don't understand? I've been working 2 jobs, raising a child alone, handing you money I didn't have to give. And you still had the nerve to look my daughter in the eyes and decide she didn't exist for you?" Silence. That was when my father walked in, reeking of whiskey, his eyes bloodshot. "What's this? You come here to play detective." He staggered, slamming his fist against the doorframe. "You think you're better than us now? Because you got some degree, some job, some little brat." The words pierced me, but this time they didn't break me. They sharpened me. For years I had let them hold power over me, guilt-tripping me into submission. But standing there I realized something. I wasn't the weak one. They were. And weakness disguised as cruelty is the ugliest kind of all. I picked up the receipts, shoved them back into my father's chest, and said the words I should have said years ago. "You've lost me. Forever." I walked out, slamming the door behind me. And as it shut, it felt like the final nail in a coffin. But I didn't know. They were about to take my defiance as war. And war with them meant they would stop at nothing. I thought walking away would end it. That shutting the door, cutting the cord would finally free me. But I underestimated them. When people like my parents lose their supply, they don't disappear quietly. They lash out. It started small. A neighbor texted me late at night. "Your parents were at my door, saying you abandoned them. They looked drunk." Then my boss called me into the office. "I don't know what's going on at home, but your parents showed up here. They caused a scene. Said you were stealing money from them." I felt my face burn. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the rest. They weren't just desperate, they were trying to ruin me. That evening I came home to find my daughter on the porch, clutching her backpack. "Mom," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Grandpa was here. He was yelling. He scared me." That was it. The line had been crossed. It wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about protecting my child. I dialed my father's number. For once he answered on the first ring. His voice was sharp, venom dripping through every word. "You think you can cut us off, Rachel? You think you can humiliate us? We raised you. We made you. You owe us." I swallowed hard. "I don't owe you anything." His laugh was low, bitter. You'll regret this. People like you always regret it. And then he hung up. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me jolt awake, afraid they'd show up again. My daughter curled beside me asking if we were safe. I lied and told her yes. But the truth? I wasn't sure anymore. A week later it all exploded. I got a knock on my door, loud, urgent. When I opened it, 2 officers stood there. Ma'am, we received a call about possible theft. Your parents reported you've been stealing from them. For a second the world tilted sideways. They've what? One of the officers shifted uncomfortably, glancing at my daughter behind me. Mind if we come inside? I let them in, my hands shaking. They searched, asked questions, wrote notes. I explained everything. Every dollar I'd given, every receipt, every bank transfer. But the humiliation of it. The fact that my own parents had weaponized the police against me. That was the kind of betrayal that burns into your bones. When the officers left, apologizing, saying there wasn't enough evidence to press anything, I stood in my doorway staring into the night. That was when I realized something chilling. My parents weren't just broken. They weren't just addicted. They were dangerous. And if I didn't fight back, they'd keep taking pieces of me until there was nothing left. I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a mother. And mothers don't lose wars. I had spent years letting them dictate the story. The guilt. The begging. The manipulation. But the night the police left my doorstep, I knew, if I didn't take control, they would destroy me. So I started collecting evidence. Every transfer. Every withdrawal. Every single dollar I'd handed over. I pulled bank statements going back 3 years. Highlighted amounts. Made copies. Then I stacked the receipts I'd found at their house. Casinos, liquor, expensive restaurants. And attached each one to the dates of my payments. It wasn't just paper. It was truth. And truth has weight when you finally decide to throw it. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to my aunt, my father's sister, the one they always called the family traitor. I hadn't spoken to her in years because my parents poisoned me against her. When she picked up, her voice cracked with surprise. Rachel, is that really you? I told her everything. Every word, every betrayal. I expected her to doubt me. Instead she sighed. I tried to warn you. They did the same to me. Used me until I had nothing left. Then tossed me aside when I couldn't give any more. Her words sank into me like a knife. I wasn't the first victim. I was just the latest. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. Together we made a plan. She gave me names of cousins, neighbors, even old church friends who'd loaned my parents money over the years. People who had been lied to, manipulated, drained just like me. One by one I called them. And one by one they all said the same thing. Yes. They used me too. It wasn't a pattern anymore. It was a history. A legacy of destruction. By the end of the week I had a binder so thick it could barely close. Proof of everything. The lies, the theft, the manipulation. And when I looked at it I realized something powerful. For the first time in my life my parents weren't bigger than me. I had the power now. The next time they tried to call the police on me, the next time they tried to ruin me, I'd be ready. But I wanted more than to just protect myself. I wanted justice. Because my father's words still haunted me in the dark. Your child doesn't exist for us. He wanted to erase my daughter. Now it was time to erase the mask they'd been hiding behind for decades. I closed the binder, my hands steady, my heart calm. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure. And when the truth finally came out, it would burn brighter than any lie they'd ever told. The binder sat on my kitchen table like a loaded weapon. Not a gun. Not a knife. But proof. Proof that could shatter their story and finally free me. I waited for the right moment. That moment came at my cousin's wedding reception. A family event I hadn't planned on attending. But when I heard my parents would be there, spinning their sob stories to anyone who would listen, I knew it was time. I arrived late, slipping into the hall unnoticed. My parents were near the buffet, whispering to a group of relatives. I could see the performance even from across the room. My father's trembling hands, my mother's red eyes. They were telling the same tale they always told. The one where I was the villain. I walked right up to them. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. The air shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. My father's face hardened. My mother's lips trembled. I set the binder down on the table with a heavy thud. You've been telling everyone I stole from you. That I abandoned you. That I left you to starve. My father sneered. You did. I opened the binder and began sliding pages out one by one. Bank transfers. Receipts. Handwritten notes of their requests for cash. Casino slips dated the same days I'd wired them money. Here's what really happened, I said, my voice steady but ringing out across the hall. 3 years. $900 every week. That's $140,000. And this is what you spent it on. Gasps rippled through the room. My aunt stepped forward, arms crossed, eyes burning with vindication. She's not lying, she said loudly. They did the same to me. My parents shifted, but I wasn't done. You called the police on me. You scared my child. You told me my daughter doesn't exist for you. I took a deep breath. Well, now you don't exist for me. Silence. All those faces, relatives, family, friends, turning from sympathy for my parents to shock. Disgust. Bigger. My mother reached out, her voice cracking. Rachel, please, not here. Here is exactly where it belongs, I said. You've hidden behind whispers and pity for years. But the truth isn't a secret anymore. My father's hands clenched into fists. His voice dropped low, venomous. You think this is over? I stared at him, calm for the first time in years. No. This is just the beginning. But for once, I'm not the one who's afraid. And I walked out, leaving them standing in the wreckage of their own lies. But even as the door closed behind me, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from a number I didn't recognize. They're planning something. Be careful. My stomach tightened. This war wasn't finished yet. It was about to reach its breaking point. The text haunted me. They're planning something. Be careful. For days, I watched shadows move outside my window, every car slowing near my house making my chest tighten. My daughter asked why I was double-locking the doors, and I told her it was just to be safe. But inside I knew. My parents weren't done. And then it came. A knock at my door, loud, deliberate. When I opened it, 2 officers stood there again. Déjà vu. Ma'am, we've received another report from your parents, one officer said carefully. They're claiming you've been forging their checks, taking their retirement money. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetic. They were drowning, and instead of reaching for help, they kept trying to drag me down with them. Come in, I said, my voice sharp, steady. This time I was ready. I laid the binder on the table. I showed the officers the transfers, the receipts. I even pulled out signed notes my parents had written begging for more money. And then I did something I'd been holding back. I handed over statements from others in the family, cousins, neighbors, my aunt, all saying the same thing. That my parents had scammed them too. The officers flipped through the binder slowly, their faces changing. One of them finally looked up and said, Ma'am, it looks like you're the victim here. Those words felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. But the real twist? The officers told me my parents weren't just facing debt. They were under investigation already. Neighbors had reported suspicious activity around the house. Loud fights. Possible fraud. Even gambling debts tied to dangerous people. I realized then, they hadn't just been hurting me. They'd been digging their own grave, and the ground beneath them was finally giving way. The officers left with copies of everything. And for the first time I didn't feel powerless. I felt the storm shifting. That night I got another message from the same unknown number. They're panicking. You don't have to do anything. Just wait. And wait I did. 2 days later I heard the sirens. 2 police cars, lights flashing, pulling up in front of my parents' house. I stood across the street, my heart pounding as I watched officers escort them out. My mother crying, my father shouting about conspiracies and betrayal. The neighbors stared. The family whispered. And I stood there silently, watching the people who once told me my child didn't exist, being forced to face the truth that they had tried so hard to bury. But this wasn't closure. Not yet. Because justice isn't just about watching someone fall. It's about reclaiming what was stolen. And in the final act, I was going to take back everything. The image of them in handcuffs stayed burned into me. But it wasn't enough. For years they had drained me, humiliated me, tried to erase my child. If I stopped there, I'd still be living in their shadow. So I did the one thing they never expected me to do. I pressed charges. Fraud. Harassment. False police reports. I gave my binder to the district attorney, every receipt, every transfer, Every testimony from the people they had bled dry. The D looked at me across his desk and said, "This is enough to bury them." And it was. The trial didn't drag on for long. My parents tried to twist the story, claiming I fabricated everything. But paper doesn't lie. Numbers don't lie. And neither did the cousins, neighbors, and relatives who came forward to testify. I sat in the courtroom, my daughter beside me, as witness after witness stood up and told the truth. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was everyone's. And when the verdict came down, guilty on multiple counts, I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just breathed. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight lift. Their house was repossessed. Their accounts frozen. The very community they had poisoned with lies finally saw them for what they were. Not victims. Not martyrs. But predators. Me. I took the money I'd once handed over every week and started something new. A fund in my daughter's name. The same girl they tried to erase from their world. I made her the center of mine. The night of the sentencing, I drove past their old house. The windows were dark, the yard overgrown. It was nothing more than a shell, a monument to their choices. My daughter sat in the passenger seat holding her diploma and asked, "Mom, do you think they'll ever change?" I looked at her, at the strength in her eyes that I didn't have at her age, and I told her the truth. Maybe. But that's not our burden anymore. We drove home in silence, the moonlight spilling across the road like a clean slate. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't running from the past. I was walking into a future. One they could never touch again.